Well, good morning, afternoon, whatever it is where you are. Welcome to Pivot Point study. I'm going to pick up tonight, or on today, on the, I can't decide what day it is. We're going to pick up right now on lecture notes, Pivot Point session number 9. And if you have a study guide, it's on page 45. We are looking at today at Pivot Point number 6. Dealing with the tribulation and the book of Revelation, chapters 6 and 9. That'll kind of get you all set up to follow along today. So let's start out by looking at the last, let's look at the timeline. Now what I want you to remember here is that when I started the study, I tried to explain to you how close to the end all this is happening. Now look at that right there. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, you can see it. You see the line that runs there and it ends at the little 0. Well, that's where we are. And that line, now I'm near Springfield, Missouri. So if you run that line west to, say, to Tulsa, Oklahoma, I'll give you a rough idea of how far we are down from down the line. In other words, we're the last thing on the line. This is close to the end. The entire church age is just a blip on the calendar. Now, the tribulation that we're going to be dealing with today is it's the last 3.5 years on that timeline. Now, I'm going to show you that chart right there. Look at that so you can see it. 3.5 years and 3.5 years. The tribulation is made up of 2 divisions of 3.5 years each, and we'll dig into that a lot more today in this study to show it to you. But the tribulation is a 7-year-long final week where God judges the Gentile nations and gathers the remnant back to himself. The remnant are those people who have loved the Lord, who followed him in Judaism and in Christianity and every parts of the world. God has always had a remnant of people, and they have followed him. And so God's going to judge the Gentile nations, and he's going to gather all the remnant back to himself. So the entire arc of human history all fit into that last inch on that chart, on that line of that chart. It is everything we know all fits right into that last little inch there on our chart. So how did we get to this pivot point today? Well, if you remember, just to cause you to remember, we're going to go back to creation, recreation. That's 1. Then the flood, Noah's flood. That's 2. The Tower of Babel. That's the 3rd pivot point. And then we're going to look. Then we looked at redemption as being the next, and then church. We just finished the church, and now today we're dealing with trouble. Each pivot point is an act of redemption. Now that's something that I need to try to drive home today, because God is redeeming mankind. The entire Bible is a story of redemption. That's what it's about from beginning to end. But these pivot points pick up on those redemptive points and talk about them. When God, in the creation, we just talked about that, is when God redeemed the planet that was in chaos and empty as the result of the angel war that was going on. Then the flood, the next pivot. And God redeemed the altered genetics and kept bloodlines unpolluted to bring us Messiah. We talked about how if those bloodlines had remained polluted, that when the Messiah came, he would not be of the true human species. So therefore he couldn't die for us on a cross. Then we talked about the tower. That's when God redeemed man's purpose for fulfilling the earth. God said to Noah and his children, when you get off the ark, cover the earth and fill it. And then Nimrod said, no, let's stay here together. So God redeemed it when he confounded the languages and sent the people around the earth. Then we moved into redemption. And in redemption pivot, we talked about Abraham. That's where the faith thing started. But then we also gathered all the way down to Jesus under redemption. And then we came to the church. Now the church is faith's vehicle to take salvation down through time, down through to this point, to get us from Jesus to where we are today, to the tribulation. is the church, is to carry that message. And then today we're going to kick off into the tribulation, where God begins to judge the world for sin. Now, the first 3.5 years of the tribulation will be the culmination of the mess we've made of things. Now, we're going to watch humanity putrefy and rot. The things we've set in motion, the economies, the messed up weather systems, the environment, the way all the things we've done to that, the way we've governed, the way we've done religion, all those things are going to come together here in the first of the tribulation, the first 3.5 years, and really are going to be the thing that's the problem. It'll just be what we've started will reach its culmination. In my notes, I put that God is going to put a bullet in our collective brain to put us out of the misery that we've caused. And the tribulation will be that ending, that mercy event that changes the world. I believe the first half of the tribulation will not be because of God's active wrath, but because of his wrath. It will be wrath that is that we've caused. In other words, God's not just doing stuff, it's our own works that are coming to fulfillment. Now, when we get to the second half, and that's what we'll do on the next time we get back together on the pivot points, the second half of the tribulation, that last 3.5 years that we talked about there, that last 3.5 years, when we get to that point, then from there on, God is acting. It will be things that will come from heaven. We're going to talk about an asteroid that's going to hit the earth, and wormwood, and you may have heard of that. but that's going to be how that plays out. The first 3.5 is the culmination of man's mess, and then the second 3.5 will be a very active wrath of God as he sends down upon us. So back to the chart. Tribulation, 3.5 years, 3.5 years, and that comes out to 7. Now the other names for the tribulation are called the day of the Lord. That's in Isaiah 2. The day of trouble. That's in Daniel and Zephaniah. The day of Jacob's trouble is what it's called in Jeremiah 30 in the Old Testament. It's also mentioned several times in the New Testament. But since the days of Noah, the tribulation is the most dreaded time in human history. It's a time that is going to be very painful when God treads the winepress of his wrath, is what he describes it in Revelation. Jesus said a way to see this day coming is by to know when it's coming is by relating it to the days of Noah, because there's often it says in the Bible, as it was in Matthew 24 and other places, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of the Son of Man. So whatever it was like in Noah's day, we're going to repeat that, and we are repeating that. And if we had time, we'd jump into that more and dig deeper into it. But for right now, let's run on. So how do we know the tribulation will be 7 years long? I mean, did somebody just sit down and say, "Oh, it's going to be 7"? No, it's a very complicated and obfuscated prophecy for God's reasons alone. Now, I don't know why God chooses to speak as he does and say the things the way he does, but that's God's business, not mine. So what we're going to look at is Daniel chapter 9. So if you have a Bible, turn to Daniel 9:24. And here it speaks of 70 weeks. 70 weeks declared or set aside for your people, the Jews. And here it is. Now, to finish transgression, to put an end to sin, atone for wickedness, bring in everlasting righteousness, seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. So Daniel lays out a very extensive mission or plan for the tribulation, for the things it is going to accomplish. When it's done, when the tribulation is over, it will end all the folly of rebellious man and begin 1,000 years of amazing peace and amazing progress. And just, it's going to be a wonderful time. Just imagine, if you will, 1,000 years of humanity where there was no sin, where there was everybody truly loved each other, put the others first, preferred the others, was no selfishness. Add to that then all the resources we could possibly need, everything we've needed, no energy shortages, no food shortages, completely resourced at that time. And you put all that together and add to it that there won't be any war to distract us or get us. And boy, folks, listen, that is going to be an amazing time, that millennium. But that comes after the end of the tribulation. Now, I believe during those days that mankind will take a quantum leap into the sciences and the arts. I think during the millennium, and we're going to talk about this a whole lot more when we get there, we will absolutely expand our knowledge in sciences and the arts. We're going to write our best music and our best poetry that we've ever written will be written during the 1,000-year millennium. We'll make huge strides in physics and understanding our existence. We'll explore space. I really believe during that 1,000-year millennium, we will explore our solar system and maybe even on into the galaxy. Who knows how far we'll go. On Earth, I believe that diseases will be eliminated and life expectancy will be extremely elongated to where similar to the life expectancy of people before the flood. You remember, they lived in their 900s. So there was one place I was reading in the Bible where it says that during the millennium, a man who dies at 100 years old will think of that it was a tragedy because he died so young. So when the tribulation is over, when it ends, the very best things we've ever wanted, the things we've ever needed, the things we've ever dreamed or we've ever hoped for, all those things will be here. We'll have all that. Jesus will return at the end of the tribulation, and he'll lead us to fulfill God's complete dream for humanity. All right, now let's dig into excuse me. Annie, you may want to cut that out. 5, 4, 3. Okay, so why 7 years? That's a good point. Prophecy is like a jigsaw puzzle that God put out for us to solve. He left that out for us to look at, for us to figure out. It's not just cut and dried. It's kind of, there's some interpretation involved. Sometimes when you're dealing with prophecy, days stand for weeks, sometimes years, and we don't know. So let's go back now and figure out what we do know. How did we come up with this? First of all, Daniel, in the Old Testament, Daniel received a vision from God about the end times. It was one of the more complete and far-reaching prophecies that we have in the Bible. And Daniel, he was told that 70 times 7 will fulfill all things. So we have 70 weeks. Look at this chart. 70 weeks will fulfill all things. 70 of 7s. So Daniel was told that. Then, and in that same area, he's told that 69 weeks will be part of this. So you got 70, but then part of the vision had dealt with only 69 of the weeks. And it says some of the most fascinating stuff in the Bible, where it says that at the end of that 7 times 69, which is 483. So when we get to that 69 weeks times 7, that is going to be exactly how long before Messiah is cut off. Now, what does that mean? So from the day, now this is historically proven, from the day that Cyrus told the Jews they could go home from Babylon and rebuild Jerusalem, rebuild their temple, from that very day, 483 years later, Jesus died on a cross. So Daniel's prophecy here is absolutely spot on. This is absolutely amazing. If you have ever any doubt that the Bible is inspired word, is the inspired word of God, explain that to me some other way than divine insight. So let's look at the chart. We got 7 weeks. We got 7 weeks times 7. Then we have 69 weeks times 7, which equal 483. What's the problem here? There's a missing week. There's a 7 that's gone from this. And so we're going to have to, that's where the 7 is going to come into the tribulation. That's why some, and I myself included, believe that that's the tribulation. Now, the tribulation, I think, will be a fulfillment of that 1 week we missed. Now, Daniel 9:27 says about the tribulation, he will confirm a covenant with many for 1 7. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to the sacrifice and offering. So, let's come back to this chart. 3.5 years in, 3.5 years in, and then 3.5 years to complete 7. In the middle of that, something's going to happen. Something prophetic and amazing is going to happen, because he's going to confirm it. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to the sacrifice and offering. So something to do with Judaism, the temple, is going to happen. Now here's what I'm going to tell you I think is going to happen. The Antichrist is going to make a covenant with the world for that 7-year period. He says he'll make promises. He's going to say, I will end hatred and war between the races. We will end the religious and financial and sectarian conflicts. We're going to put an end to all that. And he will promise the world that he's going to do that. And folks, you know how important that would be to people if they knew there was going to be no more war. There'd be just safety all over the planet. Everybody be fed, plenty of housing, be no more worries. Man, the world will follow somebody like that. The world will say, okay, that's what I want. But the problem with that is he is not the Messiah. He is the false Messiah. So the promises, he's going to promise vaccines and cures for all diseases. He will, as I said, he will promise to end all the strife, the ethnic, the sectarian, the ethnic, the religious strife. We also know that during the middle point of that tribulation time, 3.5 years in, he's going to shut down Judaism. He will end the sacrifice. He's going to shut it down. And I also believe that he will shut down the Vatican and disband evangelical worship all over the planet and independent worship. He will not allow it because he's going to put in a new thing. He will end the Muslim worship. They will not even be able to worship, because he's going to amalgamate, combine all together, all the world religions into one, and he's going to be the God of it, the head of it. So in the middle of the tribulation, all religions are going to be outlawed. Okay, now in the middle of this time, you have to give me a little leeway here because it's not real clear, but somewhere as we approach, say, the last year or two of the first part of the tribulation, we're going to watch the Antichrist begin to come to power. And he's going to make all these great promises, and it will seem like when we get like 3.5 years into the tribulation that he's going to be able to do it. And so he's going to call the world together for a celebration, planet-wide. He's going to set a day, and all the TV cameras will be pointed at the Jewish synagogue, the new temple, honestly, in Jerusalem, the new temple. And he's going to gather everybody there today to this for a huge celebration. At this celebration, he is going to commit what is called the abomination of desolation. Now, that's another kind of a Bible word. It goes back to Antiochus Epiphanes back in the Roman era. When he came to Jerusalem, he he sacrificed a pig, a sow, on the altar there in the temple. And of course, that was sacrilege beyond words, because the Jews don't even eat pigs. And then he offered a pig on the altar to Zeus, I think it was. But at this moment, at this time, the Antichrist is going to proclaim himself God of the new world religion. He will demand worship. He will demand that all religions worship him at this time. He's going to use, I am convinced, he will use artificial intelligence and quantum computing to give himself the appearance of being godlike. For instance, he'll be able to make predictions and figure stuff out, analyze food supplies. I mean, he will act like God because he will use these quantum computers, which are simply amazing. And it will give him the appearance of being godlike. Do you remember when Nimrod, we talked about Nimrod and the New World Order, about how Nimrod was the original Antichrist and he was the original founder of the New World Order. Well, what if this Antichrist to come, what if he claims to be a genetically reanimated Nimrod? That's kind of weird, isn't it? But I suspect that that's not outside of possible. I suspect that may very well be part of it. And the world will be amazed. They will be shocked. They will run to him because he is going to be something that we've never seen before. We live in the most interesting times in the history of the world. I'm so glad God let me live today in this world. It's scary right now, and it looks a little like uncertain as to what's going to happen next, but I'm so glad I got to live now. Matthew 24 says, "As it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man." So like Noah's day before the flood, it's going to be like it is in our day before the tribulation begins. So at that midpoint, this old Antichrist, he's going to launch, you might want to call it the Fourth Reich. He'll start the New World Order. He's going to end all religions. So what sounds like so positive and so good will very rapidly turn into something horrible, because he will eliminate freedom from the planet. There'll be such controls on people that people will literally rebel against it, and there will be an uprising against him, and they'll make war on the beast, the people that are left on the earth. But it will not work. They will fail, and blood will run deep on the planet. There's so much bloodshed here. And then he's going to set up an image. Now, we don't know what that is. It may be an android or something, an image. He's going to set up an image of himself or something that will be artificially intelligent, informed by quantum computing. And that vision, that thing, it's called an image, he will require all the world to worship it, which will be an idol or a reflection of him. So Daniel tells us in 9:27 and in Revelation 13:15 that the Antichrist will reign for the last 3.5 years of the tribulation, and it will be hell on earth until Jesus returns and puts the Antichrist in the abyss, along with the false prophet and all their demonic supporters. All those people will be locked up at the end of that 7-year tribulation period. Now, during the tribulation, let me remind you again, it's my opinion that the first 3.5 years of the tribulation will be where mankind reaps what we've sown. The things we've set in motion, the evil we've caused, will just ramp up and run up until we get to the midpoint of the tribulation. And then God is going to send things from the sky, from space, and crash into the earth. And again, we'll talk about this a lot more when we get into our next study. Not today, but next time. So the run-up to the tribulation started right after the crucifixion. For the past 2,000 years, we've been watching things ramp up, trouble come, and the four horsemen, some people are wondering, are the four horsemen loose on the earth today? And honestly, they have been. I think they've been loose on the earth for all that time as well. I think sometimes they're given more power, sometimes less. But if you look back through history, we have always seen the four horsemen. But when we get to the tribulation, what they've done in the past will be nothing compared to what they're going to do in the future. So this run-up, that I call it, this acceleration, this crescendo of events is like a labor pains on a pregnant woman. And the pains increase and increase until the baby's born. And that's the way this is going to look. Why this run-up? Well, I'm just speculating. But I suspect that the run-up may be God's way of saying to all of us, wake up, repent and return. See, if we do repent and return, who knows what God might do? He might put off the tribulation for 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, we don't know. It's kind of up to us. Do you remember the story of Jonah and the Ninevites? Jonah, after he was out of the fish, after he was out of the fish and on his way, God sent him to a town called Nineveh, huge town. There in Mesopotamia, between the rivers. He sent him to Nineveh, a tremendously violent people, mean, evil people. But he said, Jonah, go down and preach to the Ninevites and tell them to repent, or I'm going to destroy them. Well, you know what the story is as well as I. Jonah went down there and preached, and those people repented. They repented. It says from the king down to the very lowest person, they repented, and they turned back to God. And you know what God did? He delayed their judgment. He put it off. As we read history, he later gave it to them, but it was 150 years or so later. Well, okay, so that'll give you kind of a run-up here. Now let's look at some signs of the times. How do we know when this is going to happen? How do we know we're getting close to the tribulation? Now, today in our study, we'll not be able to do a comprehensive look at all signs. We don't have time for this. We'll come back and get it later, but in this focus of this study, we're going to focus on just a few. The first thing I want to look at, we find in Revelation 6:8, it says, given this rider on the pale horse is given authority over a fourth of the earth to kill with a sword, with a famine, and with pestilence. One of the signs that you can watch for as we approach tribulation will be the increase and the widespread nature of famine. Famine is a sign of the times that will tell us we're getting close. We're told that 1/4 of the world's population during the final ride of this horse, of this pale horse, will be drastically short on food. They'll be starving to death. 1/4 of the earth's population. It's scary. The huge populations of Africa, Asia, right now, many of them are hovering at the point of starvation. Just one failed crop, one bad leader, one drought, one locust infestation, and they're without food. And that's a huge population in Africa and Asia. Now, add to that what we see happening in our world today, COVID, and the impact and effect of what COVID is doing, locusts, climate change. All these things are going to exacerbate this famine. Now, here in the United States, right now, this is the week before Thanksgiving. This is we're getting up to mid-November, and as we even today in America in 2020, we're watching, hearing of food shortages caused by the COVID. by flooding, by swine diseases, contamination in our meat packing houses, and the inability to get workers because of the COVID. It's all kind of connected together. You see, in America today, and probably all the Western world, our stores are stores that feed the cities and the countryside as well. But our stores have, they tell me, only a 3-day supply of food. Now, what's called just-in-time delivery. So the computers are all set up to where the trucks come in just at the right time to resupply shelves and whatever. So it's not going to take much to figure out that we could really be close to a food shortage in America. Something 3 days of shelf food, the on-time deliveries, they just keep replenishing. But what happens if that changes? My dear friends, America is 9 meals away from chaos. Just mark my word. It would not take much for this nation to fly apart. When food shortages, when people get hungry, there's no telling what they will do. Then we're told also, in another one of the last day signs is going to be economic issues, economic crashes. Pick that up in Revelation 6:6 and read there. There it talks about a quart of wheat for a working man, and you can read that, because what that means is that a man who works during this time of inflation, which the tribulation could very well be a time of horrid inflation, it could be, and it says in the Bible that during that time a working man will earn enough money to buy a quart of wheat. And with that quart of wheat, he can make a small loaf of bread. With that small loaf of bread, he might be able to feed himself and his wife. But man, to go on down to children and feeding them. So the point that the Bible is trying to make here is that working people in the tribulation aren't going to be able to make enough money to feed themselves or their families. So this just moves right hand in glove back to the food shortages. Now, America is based on the petrodollar. Our economy is propped up by oil. President Richard Nixon took America off the gold standard and put us on the paper dollar back in 1971. Until that time, our government had set the price at gold at $35 an ounce as compared to the dollar, to the paper dollar. But it was set, it was held, it was locked in, it was stable. Your paper dollar represented money that was stored for, in other words, you could turn it in and get gold, so theoretically. So without then anything backing up our currency, today there is no gold standard. Nothing backs up your dollar except oil. Now, the dollar is only as good as people think it is. So as long as there's confidence in our economy, in the American economy, as long as there's confidence, and we need that American dollar to buy oil, etc., then it's okay. But when that confidence fails, our dollar will absolutely be worthless. Just imagine how worthless digital money will be, which is the coming trend, as we see it coming, where money is never in your hand any longer. It's just on an account, on a digital bank account. Imagine how easy that will be to manipulate and whatever, change. It scares me. If Russia and China were to begin to trade for oil in other currencies, in their currencies, the American dollar would fall and the world would panic. There would be runs on banks all over the Western world. It would be a catastrophe. Revelation tells us that there will be food to be bought, but it's just going to be too expensive. And so that's what we see coming. So the word to the wise, let me just stop a minute and tell you things I've been telling you for a long, long time. It's time to prep up. It's time to get some food stored away in your house. It's late, but it's not too late. There are still some food to be bought and prepped and stored. Go now. Get water. get food and water, and I think you need some guns and ammunition, some tools and gold. Learn some skills. Learn how to do something. We live in a day where people don't know how to do anything. No carpentry skills, no gardening skills, no mechanical skills. Just everybody does everything for us. When we need something done, we hire it done. Well, what happens when you can't hire it done any longer? You're going to have to do some things. So learn a skill. While I'm here on this sort of prophetic angle, let me say that if you use your head just a moment and you think, what will happen to me when the world discovers we're out of food? Well, there's going to be mad chaos as people try to feed their families. And you say, well, no problem. The police will take care of it. They'll protect me. No, they won't. You know why? Because they're going to be too busy taking care of their own families. There will be no police. Well, what if my house catches on fire? It will burn down because the fire departments, they're going to be all out taking care of their own families. So just run that out to the conclusion, and you're going to discover that when this thing all comes apart, it comes apart completely, and you are going to be responsible for feeding your family, for taking care of your family, for protecting your family. You and the people who are around you in your group. You need to seriously consider that. Venezuela today is a great example of what can happen on a worldwide basis. One of the most amazing economies in all America, Central America, went to absolutely to nothing in a very short amount of time. We're told that in Europe during World War II, if you wanted to buy a loaf of bread, it would take a wheelbarrow full of money to buy a loaf of bread. Well, the bad news is our economy in America is so far in debt. Right now, our nation is so far in debt, we will never get out of it. It cannot be done. We cannot pay off our debt. Some are talking about a reset, and that's scary, but there's no other way out of it. Fiat money and the stimulus payments that we all have gotten from the COVID stimulus to help keep people off the streets and keep things going, that stimulus money, where do you think that comes from? That comes from you. You are paying those stimulus. Every time a dollar is given out in a stimulus to someone, you can take a dollar out of your pocket, take a scissors, and cut off a corner of it. Because it devalues your dollar just a little bit. In other words, it spreads out your dollars to where everybody gets a little piece of your dollars. So you need to understand that. This COVID substance stuff, they're not what you think. They're taken from those who can pay. So when that happens, Social Security or other government assistance things won't cover the need. They may be giving you some money, but it will never be enough to feed or to take care of you. Revelation 9:21 says, "Nor did they repent of their murders, or their sorceries, or their sexual immoralities, or their thefts." So as we move then into these signs, we're going to watch these things come up. Murdering, sorceries, occult, sexual immorality, and thievery. It's watching. And you know, this is all happening while we are defunding our police departments. What? Imagine that. When we're going to need them the most, we're going to have them the least. It's just stupidity. America is committing suicide. So develop a survival plan. Figure out a way to live that doesn't depend on any government support, police or fire department, or even emergency medical. Figure out a way to make things work, because we could be running out of that. Let's look at some more signs. And this is an increase in violence I want to talk about. One day, middle America is going to have enough. I'm concerned this may happen, and they'll take to the streets. Now let's analyze for just a moment. When the little kids are out in the street breaking windows and burning cars, etc., you know what I'm talking about. The young people, millennials and down, when they're out in the street like a bunch of kids running around breaking things, well, we don't get too worried about it. So big deal. It's all financial. But let me tell you something to worry about. When the real workforce of America, when the moms and the dads of the kids that are out in the street, when the moms and the dads take their AR-15s off the rack and put several extra clips in their pocket, and they go out into the streets by the millions, then blood's going to run in the streets. That's why the world is afraid of us, and why the Second Amendment is so important, because we must retain that ability for moms and pops, for dads and moms, to defend our nation, to defend their families. And so you think it was bad when the kids were in the street rioting? Wait till the moms and pops are in the street rioting with military training, with weapons, and as one person said, there's a gun behind every blade of grass. Well, yes, with all of that, that's when stuff's going to happen. Now, on that subject, I'm going to say, some people cannot imagine a Christian taking a weapon and defending themselves. Let me tell you a story that Jesus told. We'll find about Jesus' life. On the second missionary journey, when he sent his disciples out for the second time, here's what he told them. Sell your coat and buy a sword. It's right there. Read it in the Gospels. So what's Jesus saying? There comes a time when we have to stand up. Being nice is good. Oh, I'd like to be nice. But nice is never a virtue. Nice is not a command of God. We're told to take care of our loved ones and our friends. So standing up for truth and defending our loved ones is a very Christian thing to do. We're taught, to turn the other cheek, and that's right. We're taught to go the second mile. Absolutely, amen. But that goes out the window when somebody's approaching those you love with the intent to do them harm, with a gun or with a mob coming to your house. That intent that Christianity holds of such value, which is so precious, but it goes out the window when you need to defend yourself, or when a foreign army marches down your road. So there may be a time when we will have to put into play the Second Amendment and defend ourselves against foreign and domestic governments. So is it wrong to defend yourself? No, it isn't. Is it wrong not to defend yourself? And that may be the real question. Now, I think it is. That may be the greater. Satan hates God's people. He does. You're a Gentile. God-loving people will become increasingly oppressed as we move into the tribulation. Let me give you a little thing I heard this past week about what's coming, and that's socialism. Because socialism is winning the hearts and minds of our younger people. I don't know if you've realized it or not, but the coming generations, the coming people, the millennials and younger, they prefer socialism. Listen very carefully. You vote in socialism, you voted into power, but you have to fight your way out of it. You voted in, but you go to war to get out of it. That's how it works. So socialism as a government model has a perfect track record. I want you to know this. You need to tell your children and your grandchildren. Socialism has a perfect track record. It's failed every time. Total failure. So one day a global government, a socialistic global government will come to power. It will be led by Jesus, and for 1,000 years it will be a golden age. It's the age of the millennium. But Satan will also make an attempt to create his own one world government, the New World Order, and he will seek to end nationalism and vote a government that control people easier, but that's going to happen. So keep your eyes on the United Nations. Watch them close. The United Nations is not the friend of freedom. The United Nations is a Chinese-dominated organization with plans to be a central player in the New World Order. United Nations has a web page. You can look it up. And here's Here's the web page. It is let's take our planet back. http://UNNWO.org. Now that's it. Let's take our planet back. http://UNNWO.org. So what is that? Well, let me break it down for you. Let's take our planet back. United Nations New World Order. NWO. It's just, they don't even hide it. They're behind it. The United Nations has an agenda. It's called 2030, Agenda 2030. It has 17 goals. You can look them up and read them. But what those 17 goals will do will bring the beast of Revelation and the New World Order into play. The founding premise of our American fathers, the premise and founding of the United Nations is commendable. That makes sense. Get the world together. Solve all the problems. It does make sense. But in practicality, it is a tool in the hands of the enemy. And it's here to take away all that is good and holy. Well, fear is going to drive people to accept the New World Order and the beast system. Let's talk about the mark of the beast for just a moment. In Revelation 13:16, it will be a requirement that you have the mark of the beast to buy, sell, or participate in society. People ask me, you think the COVID-19 vaccines might be a part of the mark of the beast? The answer is I don't really think so. No, I don't. I do believe it's a step on the road to it. It's preparing us for whatever that is coming. It's preparing us to line up and do whatever governments tell us to do. But this year, 2020, we've lost so many of our freedoms. We've witnessed trends that point to more control, more regulation, more requirements. You gotta wear a mask. You gotta have shots. You gotta, whatever. So the mark of the beast is more than a vaccine. I want you to be aware of that. It's more than just a vaccine. The mark of the beast is literally an entryway into the beast system. It may contain DNA altering things that will cause you to be something else. Nanoparticles may be a part of it that will go in and on the inside begin to change you. Now, it will be sold as a good change. For instance, the mark of the beast, they may market it by saying, come take the mark of the beast, because it will help you live longer, it'll cure your illnesses, it'll slow down the aging process. We can promise you all these things if you'll just take the mark of the beast. Oh yeah, you'll have to give up all your faith and your religion, and you'll have to denounce Christ and accept but just go ahead and take the shot. It'll be good. Now, folks, Jesus died to save mankind. What if we become changed to the point where we're not human anymore, but human 2.0? See, Jesus didn't die for human 2.0. He died for Adam's children. So we might just be disqualified from redemption if we take the mark. I don't think anyone will be tricked into it either. You need to listen to this. I know people worry about this, and I do too. Well, what if I get the mark of the beast and don't even know it? Well, you will know it. It will be a willful decision on that a person. You're going to make that with full knowledge of what you're doing, because it's going to align you with the rebellion. Now, so don't worry about it. You won't be tricked into it. There are more signs I want to talk about just briefly. There's going to be increased tensions in the Middle East. Ezekiel 38 and 39 talk about a war that's coming called the War of Gog and Magog. We'll look at that more later. And then apostasy, a general falling away from the faith. 1 and 2 Timothy talk about a great apostasy. Then lawlessness. My goodness. We're watching that run up, aren't we? That's ramping up right around us. Minneapolis, Portland, Baltimore, Washington, D.C. Wow. Yeah, we're seeing that. Matthew 24:12. And because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. So 2 Thessalonians calls him a man of lawlessness. When war, pestilence, famine, loss of faith all combine to destroy our civilization, and everything is laying around us in ruins, the Antichrist will step up and say, follow me and I'll fix it. And people will flock to him, take a mark, take a shot, whatever. because they think he can fix it. But folks, wait till next week when we dig into the second half of the tribulation and watch what he's going to do. He will not fix it. He will totally destroy freedom from the earth. It will be hell on earth. Only solution, the only redemption and salvation will be when Jesus comes. If those days were not shortened, then there would be nobody left. And that's what will happen under this world leader with the New World Order. Well, thank you for listening today, and I look forward to being with you next week as we pick up Pivot Points again. God bless.